I wanted to show how you could combine the gravestones and the bare earth inserts to make gravestone inserts. It's pretty simple to do. All you need to do is find some way to adhere the gravestone to the bare earth insert. You could just use super glue if you wanted to. You can't use plastic glue because that won't work on the resin. You could use a bit of green stuff or kneadedite epoxy putty. For me, what I like to use for inexpensive things where I don't need to sculpt a lot of detail is Magic Sculpt. Magic Sculpt I get from a taxidermy supply center, mail order, and I end up with 5 pounds of the stuff, which is enough to last me usually 3 or 4 years. So here I've mixed it up, and this is just like an epoxy putty, and I'm just going to put a bit of it there on the bottom. You could do the same thing with green stuff, which many modeling people are more familiar with, but that would get to be a pretty expensive way to do this. But then again, if I just went through and put a little super glue there on the bottom, that'd work just the same. And then I'm going to push this down into the center of the bare earth insert. Now at this point things are glued on there and it's all good and well. I can wait for it to dry, but I'll probably want to go through and hide the seam there some. I could go through and put in some more sculpting putty and sculpt in an even seam there, or if I fill it in thickly with glue and then coat it with sand, that'll take care of it as well. Now that this is dry, rather than going through and taking the time to sculpt a nice smooth transition, I'm just going to go ahead and glob on some straight Elmer's glue all. And I'm going to put it on thick enough that it should create a nice transition on its own. Make sure that you're not using school glue whenever you're doing any kind of terrain products. And I'm not being careful with this, I'm just kind of globbing it on there. That'll end up looking like rocky earth anyway. Don't use school glue because it tends to react poorly with water. It's designed to be washable, so when it gets wet, the school glue tends to dissolve pretty easily in water. So the next thing I'm going to do is take this and just sprinkle some sand on it. You can get sand that's like hobby sand. You can get play sand in order to be able to do it from like a hardware store. For me, I get my sand from the local volleyball court, and it tends to work pretty well. So all I'm doing is going through, and while that glue is still wet, sprinkling the sand on there, and then making sure that it's knocked off. Alright. And that's it. That's all there is to it. Once this dries, and I want to give it a good long while to dry because I put on so much glue, I'm ready to prime it and paint it, and then I can drop it in and use the area terrain bases to create graveyards as well.